Ready to go.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Nice to see some faces. Welcome. It's really lovely to have you all here with us today. It's really nice to be here. This is actually the first time Melissa and I have seen each other in person for 3 months. So it's wonderful to actually see a colleague for the first time in a while. We're doing this from home, so excuse any of the technological hiccups, but we're all pretty used to them, I think, after the last few months.
Or dog sounds.
And dogs and kids, yeah, all of them are here. My name's Cheryl. This is Melissa. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet. Of course, that's different for all of us in different places around Australia. For us, it's the Wongal people here in the inner west of Sydney. And I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Really important since we've just celebrated National Reconciliation Week as well. I'd also really like to thank you all for your time today, and also take a moment to acknowledge teachers and the staff that work in schools. We're really lucky we get to work with you all in many different ways all the time, but I think we're really we really acknowledge that the past few months have been incredibly difficult. You guys have had to change the way that you've taught your students, literally overnight. I've had children homeschooling, learning from home here, and we've been incredibly impressed and grateful for the work that you all do. So it would be great to start with a thank you to you as well. My name's Cheryl Nixon. I am the Director of Donor Relations with Schools Plus.
And I'm Melissa Simons. I'm the School Community Fundraising Officer at Schools Plus. So I'm just going to share my screen. Sorry, it's not on the right screen. All right, now we'll jump into that. So the purpose of our webinar today is what it says right here. It's a Fundraising Fundamentals webinar. We're giving you an overview of fundraising for your school. We know it's a super difficult time for a lot of school communities at the moment. So we've really tried to shift the webinar to focusing on raising funds outside of your school gate. So beyond a cake stall or a sausage sizzle, they're not really possible at the moment. So this is a lot of focus on online fundraising and how you can shift your attention to further outside your usual scope of people that you might ask for money. During our time together, we'll be talking a bit about Schools Plus, who we are, what we do, and the schools that we can support. Then we'll be going into project planning and creation. And then the very hot topic that we always ask is where to find funds, who to ask for donations and that kind of thing. And Cheryl will be doing a bit of a focus on grants. She's our grant guru at Schools Plus, so she will be giving you some insights from her perspective. And then we'll be diving into our Fundraise Yourself platform. So that's our digital fundraising platform, which is, it's a crowdfunding platform, and schools that are eligible for our support can use that. But we'll talk about that a little bit further on. So some logistics before we kick off. So we'll be using we'll be screen sharing, and we'll be also using our website as well. So if at any time you can't see what we're talking about, just give us a shout and we'll remedy that. It's a little bit daunting driving a live webinar, so it's just let us know if there's something that you're not seeing. We will be recording it, so if you need to duck off at any point, that's more than fine. We will send out a copy afterward, or if you've got any colleagues that you want to forward this on to, that's great. And with that link, there'll be a short survey. We'd love any feedback that you have for us. We'd love to continue to grow and improve this webinar to make it as useful as possible. And we want to make this really interactive as well. So there's a chat function that you can use in the webinar. So that's a little speech bubble icon. Click on that. If you want to give that a test now, just give us a shout out of the school that you're representing today and the projects that you might have in mind. So if there's a fundraising project that you want, and then we can try and tailor our examples.
Yeah.
So that type of thing. And for just to minimize distractions, we've muted everyone, and we will, we'll leave videos on, that's fine. We were thinking of doing a little bit of a wave. We'll pop cameras on, and one of our marketing team, they're going to take a bit of a screenshot so we can see everybody's smiling faces. So I'll stop sharing now.
Yeah, we might do that now, I think. And I can see that the was sharing up there. Oh, stop sharing. Yeah, there we go. So if you want to turn your cameras on, that would be great, so we can all see your faces as well for a minute.
Yeah, that'd be great. Hello to Warrnambool College. We've got Albion Park Rail Public School, which is right near where I grew up. Railway, Tab Railway Station Public School. Lardner District. Hi, Lisa. Evans River.
Brilliant. All right, can everyone give us a bit of a wave? We'll get a photo, and so good. Nice to see all your faces. Yeah, thank you so much. So nice. All right, well, I'm going to start having a bit of a chat about Schools Plus and who we are and what we do. So Schools Plus is a national charity, and what we're about is making sure that students are able to access the sorts of education opportunities that they need to really fulfill their potential. And really this is about no matter where they come from or what their background is. It's great to see many of you here today. Some of you have connected with us in the past, and some of you are new to Schools Plus. Those of you who know about us may know that we do our work by connecting schools in less advantaged communities with donors who do know the value of education and who do want to make sure that students have those sorts of opportunities. We were founded as a result of the first Gonski review back in 2011, nearly 10 years ago. We came about a few years after that, but the Gonski review recommended that an organisation like ours be established to be that kind of connector between philanthropists, whether they be individuals or companies and organisations, and the schools that really need their support the most. We've been fundraising now for just over 5 years, and in that time we've been able to fund more than 750 projects, and we've added over $18 million into the Australian education system in that time, and benefited just over 233,000 students and about 12,500 teachers through the projects that we've been able to support. So we're really thrilled about that, and the last little period's been a really crazy time for us as well, because we have obviously had a real focus on schools that have been affected by both bushfires and coronavirus more generally, and we have been able to fund more than 50 schools just in the past month or so, with some funding, with some more coming up in the future as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I talked about schools that are in less advantaged communities being the main focus for us, and we do have a criteria around that. We look at schools that are below 1,000 on the ICSEA scale, the Index of Community Socio-Educational Advantage. So you can see your school's ICSEA value on the My School website, and some of you may be from schools that have a value above 1,000 on the ICSEA scale. Please stay with us while we are not able to necessarily financially support you. We have had many people from above 1,000 ICSEA schools on this webinar, and they've told us that that's still useful and provide a lot of tips.
Yeah, and you can even share your experience with the schools and in the chat. So yeah, we welcome you to stay with us.
Absolutely. Some of the benefits of working with Schools Plus and fundraising through Schools Plus. The tax deductibility that we offer. So we have been set up with what's called a deductible gift recipient status, and that enables donations through Schools Plus to be tax deductible. There aren't that many schools that have DGR status. Some do, or you might have DGR status for a building or a library fund. But our DGR status is available for all sorts of projects within your school, and it will allow all donations to your schools to be tax deductible. And we also hope that what we offer is the kind of potential to allow you to reach out to wider networks as well. So we have a crowdfunding platform called Fundraise Yourself that enables you to spread the word a bit further, I think, than potentially what many schools do now, to be able to fundraise for the really sorts of necessary projects that you have going on. We have a whole heap of resources and support available, and through webinars like this and other forums, we really encourage you to share your experiences and learn from each other as well. So another reason to be really interactive today, so please keep telling us your stories. Melissa will run through the Fundraise Yourself platform in a bit more detail later on, but it has been specifically set up for schools and PNCs. It's free for you to use. Like other crowdfunding platforms, it gives you a unique web link to share then with your networks. You can include photos and videos and give updates to your donors. But as I said, it is the only way that you can offer a tax deduction to your donors if they donate through Schools Plus.
All right, so moving into the next phase of our webinar, we'll be talking about your fundraising project and planning for that. So the very first step in a fundraising project that we always recommend is to create a plan. It doesn't need to be a massive document. It can be a one page, it can be on the back of a napkin, you know, it doesn't matter what it looks like. I just recommend getting it all down on paper before you begin, and that will really help you to guide the fundraising activities that you're doing. It can also help you get on board people that you need to get on board at the very beginning. For example, your principal is somebody that you really need to get on at the very beginning of a fundraising project. They need to approve it and give it the green light. It's really hard to fundraise without principal approval. They also can be a big advocate for you. We have a few resources available that can help you with this. If you jump on our website in the blog section, we've got some a project planning blog, and if you're eligible for our support, we do have a planning resource, which I'll show you how to access a little bit later on. But what I'll talk through now is just a very, very basic plan. It's the essentials that you need just before you dive into fundraising. So the very first thing that you need to have a think about is your project dates. I'm going to use virtual reality as an example in this part. We've recently had a lot of school fundraising for virtual reality. Because, you know, essentially it's the only way we can really travel at the moment to get students engaged, and, you know, it's just upcoming technology that everybody wants to have. So when you're thinking about a virtual reality project, you might think, okay, right, I need some equipment. Have a think about when you want that in your classrooms and then work back from there. So you might need to get some quotes from technology companies. You need to, you know, wait for delivery times or procurement times from different suppliers. There'll be time that you need to spend fundraising. So plot out a timeline of activities. The next part that you'll need to think about is who is going to benefit from this project and why you're actually doing it. So for virtual reality, the obvious answer there would be your students are going to benefit from this project, but there also might be other people. For example, there might be a teacher who's going to become your VR guru, so there might be some professional learning that goes on there. You could be using the virtual reality when you're doing open days for the community, you know, when that is back and the restrictions are lifted. You know, parents, if you're in a high school, parents can see the work that your students have been doing in virtual reality if they're creating their own, their worlds and things like that. So you can showcase that kind of thing. So there's a lot of beneficiaries in that area. And why you're doing this project, it's to increase engagement, build STEM outcomes and that kind of thing. And then the next part of this would be your project description. So what are you actually raising money for? So again, with the VR, you might need the VR goggles themselves, but there's other things that accompany that. So it might be a charging station. It might be professional learning for the teachers that are involved. There might be other little costs, like teacher relief, those kind of things that come with the new technology within a school. So have a think about that. And that leads nicely into the next part, which is a budget, or what's it going to cost. So when you've got all the items that you want to raise money for outlined, you can pop in next to them how much they're going to cost. It's good to get a quote at this point, so you know exactly how much you want to raise. Because there's no point in fundraising if you raise 2,000 and then you realize that you've fallen short by 3,000 because you need a charging station and that professional learning. So stepping back and having a think about it beforehand is really important. And you may already have funds within the school that you could tap into. Maybe your PNC has a budget that they could allocate to you for this. There might be grants, STEM grants that you can apply for. And then you might do some online fundraising. And then the last part of the plan is who you're going to involve within this project. So as I said, if you're not the principal of the school, get your principal involved at the very beginning, and then pull in as many people as you can. Could be the PNC, community liaison officer, teachers, ex-students, current students, suppliers, that kind of thing. I really do stress that fundraising, it's not a solo job, it's a group effort, and just having more people to work together and delegate tasks to and expand the network, it really will help.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen some good examples where donations have come through from contacts of teachers, for instance, where the teachers have really helped with the fundraising campaign as well. Often we really acknowledge that, one of the reasons you might be thinking about fundraising is because your own community is, might be unable to financially contribute to the school, which is really common. And so you need to kind of look further afield and come up with some more innovative ways to find funds, but still getting a wider community involved in spreading the message is really helpful.
Now Cheryl's going to talk us through some tips on telling your story.
Yeah, so you've kind of set out there all of the things that you need to think about. And then the next step really is telling your story to attract the donors and to really kind of compel them to support you. So, in the case of this, we want to bring virtual reality to our classrooms because in this example, your school may be in a remote location, and VR is a great way to enable the students to, travel to ancient Rome or to swim the Great Barrier Reef or, fly to space, for instance. And experience that as part of the curriculum. And of course, it's going to teach them new technology skills. So the sorts of outcomes that you might expect are, really transformational lessons that are going to be highly engaging, increase engagement for your students, and help prepare them with the skills that they need for future study or for future jobs. So you're really bringing that together. You're trying to write it in a way that is exciting, that draws the picture for the donors so that they can really understand why that's a crucial thing for your school to want at this stage. Some donors as well, they may need additional information too. So sometimes you might have to think in more detail about the sorts of activities that you might be planning. So staying with the VR example, you know, you might need to specify that this is something that you're going to aim at your stage 3 students, let's say, if it's a primary school, and you know, the subject area might be around history, for example. There's going to be professional development for a couple of teachers so that they are skilled and able to lead classes with the technology. And you know, you might also be having a student expo at the end of the year where parents are going to be invited, if they're allowed back on school ground sometime soon, to come in and see, you know, what the students have been learning. You know, again, detail about the expected outcomes around engagement. It's good here, if you can, to be fairly specific about this. If you expect, you know, the number of students to participate in something to increase, you know, say what your target is around that. Or if you expect that there's going to be a change in attendance or a change in parent engagement from your project, it's great to put in some specific details around that. And then be prepared to answer a question around how you're going to measure that. So what data you might use, you might follow, and whether you might do surveys, for instance, is a good way to kind of measure engagement. I mean, you already have a ton of different ways to measure, you know, results in your school now. So that's so they're the sort of questions that you might get asked, and I guess in a grant application, when we get to that point as well, they're the sorts of things that you might get asked there.
Yeah, and we just had a quick question about if it's possible to share the slides. So we'll be sharing some contact details at the end. So just send me through an email, and I'll forward them on. But as I said before, there will be a recording as well that's available to everybody. Okay, so the hot topic is where to find funds. So we're going to be walking through some areas of where you can find funds. So our first piece of the puzzle for who you're going to approach would be your, what we call the school gate. This is your school community, your families, teachers, PNCs and students. For this area, we don't recommend directly asking them for funds. We recommend turning this group into your champions of the project. So if your parents and teachers are on social media, they can be sharing your project. If you're using an online platform with their networks, or, you know, they can be talking to their friends and family about it and really building the awareness of your project. The same for your PNC. And students, you know, they might tell grandma or grandpa that the school's fundraising for something that they're really excited about, and they might like to give a little bit. But this is the kind of the smallest piece of the puzzle, and we do understand that it's a super hard time at the moment for a lot of families. So we would empower this group to be your champion, give them content to share. You can write social media posts and emails even for them to do some fundraising on your behalf. And this group will also help you tap into a wider network, which we call the community connections. So as I mentioned, it's friends, it's colleagues of your families, maybe they're playing in sporting groups or religious groups. We have had some very generous donations. We had a church on the South Coast that donated to one of our projects very generously. So there are connections that you might not think of right off the bat, but your connection within the community, they could bring that to you.
I think as well, we found that local councils and the local MPs at all levels, state and federal, can also be either good allies in your search for funds, or actually be funders as well. So many councils run grant programs. MPs receive an electorate allowance, and we do know of a couple of examples of MPs who have donated to their local schools out of their electorate allowance. So if you don't know your MP, go and say hello. And some MPs also provide a kind of grants update. So even if they aren't a source of funding, they can send out a email on a monthly basis with local grants that are available. There are some, when we get to grants as well, we'll put up some other websites that are useful for grants potential. Local businesses too, and sometimes this might be businesses with which you already have connections, where families at your school might own or might work at. You know, I think that word of mouth and that kind of personal touch can be really beneficial when somebody is making, is asking because they actually have a connection to both the business and the school. But also, I mean, you've probably found this already, many businesses are quite generous, and you just need to ask that, and they will donate to you if they're in a position to be able to do so.
Yeah.
And local media is there because I don't expect that them to be used to possibly get a donation from, but definitely go to your local media to tell the story about what you're trying to raise funds for, because they're really always keen for good stories, and that's going to spread the word further too about you know, the good work that you're doing.
Yeah, just to add 2 things to what Cheryl just said. So we've got some resources that we'll show you, which is includes a media release. So I really recommend at the beginning of every project that you have a media release ready to go and send that to your local paper, as well as some photos of the students. They love to include, you know, happy smiley faces of kids in the newsletter. Just make sure you've got parental approval. And then just backtracking to grants. If you're eligible for our support, we can actually help you to apply for grants. We have a what's called a DGR1 status, or tax deductible status, something like that, which we can give to schools, and we can apply for grants that require that status on your behalf. So it's a really powerful way to tap into grants that you may not have realised that you're actually eligible for, and we'll be giving some resources a bit later on where to find those types of grants. So the next part is your extended network. So when you're thinking back to your project, for example, if it's a breakfast program, perhaps there are not-for-profits that you could go to, so you don't need to raise as much funds. So for example, Oz Harvest or Second Bite, they might be able to provide food for a breakfast program, and then you don't have to raise money for that element. So have a look at what's out there. Your business chambers and community groups are a great resource to go to. If you reach out to them, they might actually invite you to come and speak at one of their meetings, which is a really great opportunity to get their full attention. You could even take a few students along with you when you're presenting and really make a pitch for your fundraising project.
Yeah, and just thinking about businesses as well, we've talked about local businesses, and potentially there are larger businesses as well. Sometimes, so some of you might be in a community where there's a big infrastructure project that's going on in your area. Often those kind of infrastructure projects, because, you know, in recognition of the disruption that they might cause for a period of time, might offer grants to local community organisations. So tap into that and see whether there's funding available as a result of that. And also, when you're thinking about businesses to approach, think about the ones that might be most relevant to your project. So, you know, if you have a project that is about health and nutrition, for instance, you might think that your local gyms might be a good place to go to. If the project is more around technology, around the VR, like we were talking about, or I see one of the schools here has proposed a mini TV studio, which sounds like a really cool thing to have. Then, you know, going to technology-focused businesses might be, you know, a way to go. So you want to try and think about things that are really going to connect with the potential donor and feel like, you know, they're going to be quite compelled to do. Past teachers and past students are another area where we've seen some wonderful donations from former students of schools who've been made aware of projects that the school wants to pursue, and they've been keen to fund them. So that's another area to look at. And I guess the education department's there as well, and thinking about suppliers too, which I can't see on our, oh yeah, school supplies there in the pink ring. But yeah, so thinking about what might be available through through your department or through the suppliers who work with your school as well.
So now you know who you're going to approach. This is a bit of a resource on how you can approach them. So when you're launching your project, you want to let that school gate area, the people within your school community, know that you're fundraising. So let them know if you've got a school app, send an email, a message through that. If you're old school, with a newsletter, or make an announcement when assemblies are possible again, let everybody know. Share on social media. This can be really powerful, especially if you're using an online crowdfunding tool. It's not a set and forget mechanism though. You need to be continually updating and asking for funds via that, via social media. As Cheryl mentioned and we talked about before, you can apply for grants. This may be how you get funds from businesses or the local council or things like that. Another element here is call your contacts. I am a millennial, so I don't really like picking up the phone, but it is very powerful to get in touch with the people that might be interested in your project. So they might be able to give a little bit, or they might be able to put you in touch with somebody else. A conversation is always a great way. It's much harder to say no as well when you're on the phone. So
I am not a millennial, and I find certainly with Donors to Schools Plus that having phone conversations and meetings with them are particularly useful, and you might find that in your community as well. You know, we will have, you know, if you set up a project on our website, there would be a donate button. You can include a story on your website. If your website allows it, so that people can donate, you know, click straight through and donate to your project. We talked about the opportunity to present to community groups and businesses as well. That's a great way, and you might think about even bringing along a student when you do get, if you do get the opportunity to present, because you know they're ultimately the beneficiaries of these projects. So it's fantastic for the donors to connect with them. Emailing a message, and a very non-millennial thing to do as well is to send a handwritten card, or photos of your students, or you know, letters from them as well, is a great way to reach out to donors. You really want something that's going to cut through there.
Yeah, and for somebody said that they were interested in raising funds for therapy dogs. I just thought of, if you wanted to use a handwritten card, maybe you could do at the front of it, you could do some paw prints and then some hand prints, and then, you know, a letter ends up on somebody's desk, you know, with your generous donation to this project, you'll be connecting this therapy dog with X number of students. It can just be a really powerful way to connect somebody to your project. So just, yeah, I would recommend getting creative there.
Absolutely.
Oh, and with the end of financial year approaching, it is a really great way to increase funds to your school if you are eligible for the Fundraiser Self platform. So all funds over $2 that are made via our Fundraiser Self platform are tax deductible. So you can start using that in your messaging to your donors. So I've just written out a little bit of a plan here of how you could potentially use a strategy. This would probably be better if you had a project up and running with us. So maybe keep it in mind for next year. But this would be an example of what you could do. So I would recommend really creating awareness of, you know, drumming up, you know, it's end of financial year already, oh my God, and that all donations to your project are tax deductible, you know, sending that out through social media, email, again, picking up the phone and calling your contacts, and include a link. And then in mid-June, follow up with some information about how your project is going. If you've already raised some funds, giving a project update, you know, we're halfway there, we're 75% of the way there, you know, your generous donation would get us over the line. And then a gentle reminder that end of financial year is approaching. And then end of June, those last 2 weeks are when you really push that urgency to get those end of financial year donations in. You know, that it's a nice cutoff point because people need a bit of urgency to motivate them to actually donate, because a lot of people will have the intention to donate, but they just forget about it. And these reminders throughout the month really does push home, okay, yep, I really have to donate now. And I've got here a really, it's a good example of what Bomaderry High did last year for end of financial year. So they gave a bit of an update on what they did. So they received 5,435 in the month prior, so they gave an update. And then they've created that awareness of end of financial year in there as well. And then, you know, they've added that urgency, you know, tax time is just around the corner. Now is your opportunity to make a difference in the lives of our students. Included a photo of their old library. Very happy to update that they reached their goal that they were raising funds for, and we've received some really lovely photos of their brand new library. So yeah, it's a great way, especially on social media, to kind of get donations in. And just be sure to follow up on your emails and calls to potential donors. Silence isn't a no. It just means that maybe they haven't seen the email, it got lost, or they missed your call and they've just forgotten to get back to you. So I think people really do appreciate a reminder if they do have that intention.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Silence isn't necessarily a no.
Yeah.
I think we're going to talk now about grants.
Actually, no. I would love to show this. Sorry, Cheryl, this is a new part of the webinar. I'd love to show how photos and video can be really utilised by a project. So this is a video put together by a special school in Colac. They were fundraising for a bus. So I hope the audio and everything connects up. We've got subtitles there, but please forgive me if it doesn't play the sound. Oh no, sorry.
No, it's my fault.
Oh no. Sorry. All right, so we have heard that it's a bit glitchy, so we'll share the YouTube link as well in the email that I send out at the end. But yeah, it's a really powerful way. This one, I know they teamed up with a business to be able to create something as polished as this video, but you can create great things on your iPhone or with a camera. If you're in a high school even, you can have a chat with your media students and they'll probably be able to help you. So images and video, they're a really powerful tool, especially on social media. People don't really read things anymore. They go straight to video. So highly recommend. So now we're going to move into the grants part of the website, of the webinar. So before we get started in there, has anyone had any success with applying for grants? Give us a shout out, and if you've got any tips for grant writing or anything like that, we'd love to know what your experience has been.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be great to hear your experiences as well. This is designed to give you a few tips about finding grant makers and then successfully applying to them. You know, like anything, I think research is really important in the case of looking for grants. There are lots of grants out there that are available, but finding a grant maker that actually fits with the project that you're applying for is really important. So making sure that you know, that you're in the right region, or that the grant maker has a round that's relevant to what you're seeking funding for. Reading those guidelines and making sure, as the second point says, making sure you're eligible. I mean, in our example, in our case, you know, that ICSIA level is one of the key eligibility criteria. And other grant makers might have eligibility around location, or around value of project, or around, you know, when the project needs to occur. You need to really read that, research it, make sure it fits with your project before you apply. It's going to save you time and it's going to save any mistakes at the end as well. When it comes to writing a grant application, sometimes the words are really limited as well. Often they don't provide you with a lot of space to tell your story. So you've already done the preparation, you've done your project plan, and then you need to kind of be telling that story in a way that is quite compelling. So, you know, tell the story of your school's need. You know, as that video just showed, it talked about those students. It told you about who they were, about the number of students who had, you know, a low IQ, or who had autism, and described that. And then the difference that bus was going to make to their day-to-day learning activities. Again, be quite direct and specific when you're answering questions. So, you know, what your targets are, what your aim will be out of your goals. And, you know, for instance, we'd better say that we aim to increase student attendance from 70% to 90% than to just say we aim to increase student attendance. Avoid using acronyms or jargon as well. You know, the person who's reading your application may not understand what that particular acronym means. So, you know, you should spell it out, or not use eduspeak, I think is one way of describing it. Yeah, just use plain English in your application, so that you can assume that the person who's reading it, you know, won't understand if it's using language that's specific to your school.
Yeah, even words like you know, the abbreviation of community liaison officer, like CLO. I know that's used a lot in schools, but if the grant maker doesn't have a background in education, then it's going to go over their head, and that's not really easy to Google, because there's a lot of things that COL.
Yeah, SL, SO is another one I think that we see a lot.
Yeah, so just make sure you're clarifying those. You can use them, but make sure you're specifying what it is when you first reference it.
Yeah. Actually, just going back to point one, sorry, I should have said this as well. In the research, go and have a look at most grant makers have a website, and go and have a look and see what they've funded in the past as well, because that often gives you a good idea of whether the project that you're pitching to them is going to be kind of within their, you know, the sorts of things that they're usually interested in. They do provide a lot of information in those guidelines that is worthwhile reading. Include a clear and thorough budget as well, and then make sure that budget is connected to the story that you've told in your application as well. So, be quite specific in the budget. They'll often ask kind of for line items. So rather than just saying technology for $20,000, continuing with that VR example, you might need to say that, the set of VR goggles is going to cost this much, the training is going to cost this much, the charging station is going to cost this much, and break it down for them so that they can very clearly see what their donation is going to go towards. And as I say, make sure it matches the activities that you've outlined. We see a lot of grant applications, and occasionally something random pops up in the budget, as random as a bus or other things that aren't even mentioned in a shipping container recently aren't mentioned in the application. So it kind of makes you stop and go, oh, what's this about? And you don't want that to detract from your application. And finally, submit the application on time. When you're checking the guidelines in the first place, make sure that you know when the deadline is. If there is a time zone issue, make sure that you're aware which time zone it is, so that you can get it in on time. And allow yourself a bit of time at the end as well, because you don't want to leave it till the last 5 minutes and find that there's some Wi-Fi connectivity issue or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that my P&Z president went to submit an application 2 days after the closing date just last weekend. So that was...
they need to listen to the webinar.
Yeah, indeed. So there's some tips about grant writing that hopefully would help you. Are there any questions there that we need to? It sounds like a lot of you have had quite good success. That's brilliant. Just looking at Ricky's question there about applying for money for building a building. Look, I think that it is fairly necessary to have pretty well complete plans in those cases. And I think often with building, I think that's often the case because, those projects can take a long time, and donations or grants can often have a short time period. So that's one thing as well that you'd want to make sure that if the grant maker is saying that you need to spend that funding within 6 months or 12 months, is that feasible for your project, for instance? And we've seen a lot of projects that are building projects blow out both in time and cost because of the involvement of departments. I'm sure you've all had experience with your own infrastructure or kind of assets management unit within the department. Quite often that has caused some delays and can cause problems if your project doesn't stay on track.
Yeah. Sorry, I just saw that somebody raised their hand to speak. I've actually muted everyone at the beginning, so I don't really know how to turn that off. But if you're happy, just use the chat function, or you'll have my contact details at the end, and we can set up a call to have a private chat about fundraising or grants or whatever it is that you need. I'm more than happy to chat. So this is a slide that I would recommend taking a screenshot of or waiting for those slides to come in. This is where you can find funds. We've got 4 websites listed here. There's a few that are free, or some that they might be paid, but they do have free trials. You could sign up maybe with a few email addresses. I don't know. I'm not telling you to do that, but you might not have to pay for it if you just jump in and find the grant that you need to apply for. You don't need to apply for the grant through these websites. They're just a guide, and they'll usually link you to the external grant page. And as Melissa said before, if you find an organisation that is giving a grant but requires DGR status, that the organisation that they give the grant to requires DGR status, that's where we come in. We have that DGR status, so we can put in that application on your behalf. Definitely. So if you find one, just give me a call, send me an email. I'm happy to work through that process with you. So the next part, we are running short on time, so we'll just quickly zoom through these last parts. So the last part is saying thank you. It's really important to thank your donors to show that you are appreciative of the donation, but also to keep them happy with the donation that they've made and potentially for them to give again if you do for the current project or for a project that you might be running in the future. So your thank you could take the form of quotes from parents and students or from the principal. I know Cheryl just used some powerful quotes from a principal when we've been thanking our bushfire donors, and that has really showcased how the money has been spent and just how much it has been supporting the school. As we said before, using cards to say thank you. Ask your principal if they're happy to send out an email or pick up the phone and call them. It can be a really powerful way. They can get chatting with the donor potentially, and they might fund more of the project. There's a lot of opportunities that can come from thank yous. You know, when it's suitable, like when the restrictions are completely lifted, inviting significant donors to your school assembly. You know, if they've given over $1,000, they might like to come in. You know, you can thank them on assembly, or they might come in and see. So if it's a VR they've funded, come and try out the VR in the classroom. Or if it's a business and they've donated other things, you might like to show their business, like show what they've donated in action. And then again, using videos, photos, and then if it's a grant that you've applied for and won, make sure you're prepared to report back on how the funds have been spent.
Yeah, and usually that will be explained in the guidelines about what sort of reporting requirements there are as well.
Yes, exactly. So in summary of this, don't be afraid to apply for grants or ask people for a donation. If somebody says no, it's not a no forever, it's just a no for now. Same with the silence, it's not a no, just you can follow up. In the world of fundraising, there's a ratio we work with, so you'll ask 8 people for a donation, 4 people will be interested in donating, and then 1 person might actually donate. So you can see it kind of, you need to be talking to a lot of people and asking a lot of people for donations.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be in it to win it, as we say. And as
Exactly.
I always think as well, you're not asking for yourself. It's not, you're not asking for yourself. You're asking for a really good cause. You're asking for, you know, for the future of your students generally. So don't be afraid to get in there.
Exactly. So now we're going to dive into our Fundraise Yourself platform. So our Fundraise Yourself platform, it's a crowdfunding platform that can be used for schools with an ICSIA below 1,000. So I'm actually going to jump over to our live website so you can see what it looks like and how you can register. Just give me a shout if you can't see what I'm talking about. So this is our Schools Plus website. It's got our crisis appeal and everything like that. Up the top, you will see the 4 schools link. Hover over that and go into login register. You'll come to our schools page. If you've worked with us before, you'll have a username and password. Apologies that the username and password are quite long and convoluted. We're working on that. But if you haven't worked with us before, have a read of these registration guidelines and then click here to register. Yep, so that will take you through to our registration page where before you register, you'll need your school logo, your principal's email address and phone number. If you're not the principal, it'll send them an email, so make sure they're aware of what you're doing. Your details of a second contact if you're not the principal, which might be yourself or a business manager or somebody that will be working on the project as well. And then your school bank account details if you're not in New South Wales or Tassie with the central banking system. So click through all of those and then click next. I'm going to jump over to our Schools Plus account. And your dashboard, which you'll end up when you do register for the platform. So this is our Schools Plus account, but it'll be your school logo, your school name, that type of thing. You'll see across the top here, you've got your dashboard where you can see projects your account details, projects already created, project budgets, and then the resources section. So that's where you would find the media release, the project planning documents, and this is all free to access if you are eligible for our support. So you don't even need to create a fundraising project to access this. Just register your school and then jump in, and then you can have a look that way. But if you're ready to create a project, you can click here to create a project. And it will jump over to this page here. So have a read of what it says here, and then you'll be adding in your contact details, a project title. So make that something that will be catchy for a donor. If they come across it, you know, make it exciting. Don't make it too long. The amount you're looking to fundraise. Add in some project categories of what the learning outcomes will be, how many students will be benefited by this project, how many teachers. Again, this is where your dates will become important. So this is your overall project dates, and then this will be your fundraising date. This is when your project will be live on the Schools Plus website. So it can be very different. Your project might go for a year, but your fundraising might go for, you know, a term. We recommend the shorter the better. This is where you'll pop in your project details. And then images, video, donation levels, budget, that kind of thing. So you'll click those things, hit submit for a review, and then it'll come through to the Schools Plus team, or me, and I'll have a look at it. And then this is a project that we've already created. Whoop, sorry, I've jumped out of that. I'm all over the shop. So this is what a fundraising page looks like. So this was one that Chifley successfully ran for laptops. You'll see that your the goal and the amount that you've raised is at the top here, photos that you've uploaded. If you have a video, it will appear under the photo. And then your donation levels are down the side. So it's a nice visual, and your donors can get a good understanding of what you're raising funds for. So the 3 steps to get started would be register your school at our website, consult with the Schools Plus team and register your projects, and then start spreading the word. So that's the Fundraise Yourself program that we have. We also have a number of other programs as part of the Schools Plus family, I guess. And we have what's called the Smart Giving Grant Round, which will be opening up on the 20th of July. So this grant round is available for schools that are eligible for our support, and it's for funds up to $30,000 for individual schools, or up to $60,000 for a group of schools that might partner together or form a cluster. And it's for strategic projects within your school. So it will be opening up on the 20th of July, but I would recommend subscribing to our newsletter for a reminder of when that's going to open up.
Yeah, and so I guess the difference here is with the Fundraise Yourself projects and using our crowdfunding platform, you're driving the fundraising in those cases. It's a school-driven campaign, and you're reaching out to your networks, people who are going to be supportive of that local project. In the case of this grant round, these may be projects that you don't think you're going to be able to find funding for in your local community, and we raise the funds on your behalf for those projects. So many of the projects we're expecting in this round will have some connection to bushfires or coronavirus as well. They might be projects that address needs that have arisen because of those crises recently, and that's absolutely fine. We've raised a lot of funds from donors who are quite keen to support schools in those situations. or it may be something that's completely unrelated, something that's in your strategy and you've been wanting to pursue for a while but need some additional funding. Some of the larger amounts that people might have applied for in the case of this Smart Giving round. So we welcome proposals or submissions for up to $30,000 for individual schools and up to $60,000 for schools that are working together in clusters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Gillian, thanks Gillian for saying that. Yeah, so Gillian's in Tasmania and her group of schools have been working together, for a few years now, and that's right, they were lucky enough to partner with a funder who had given them an initial grant, but then has continued to support them as well. So that's in the technology field, STEM field. So that's
really
been fantastic.
Doors, for schools.
Yeah.
For the fundraising platform, what's the most? We normally recommend putting up, if it's your first time using the platform, we recommend putting projects up between $2,000 and $10,000. I think maybe 15 to 20 have been the most that we've raised through the platform. We have had bigger goals, but with this type of thing, it just looks a lot more achievable to your donor if you have something smaller up. If you do need more funds, we recommend phasing the approach. So you might do 1 year, you do 20,000, the next year you do 20,000 if your goals maybe $100,000. We wouldn't recommend putting that $100,000 project up if you don't have experience with fundraising, because it's a slog to get there, and the phasing will let you celebrate the wins along the way and not get downhearted if it's taking a bit longer than you expect to get there.
We're probably out of time, but if anyone has any last questions, do pop them up on the chat. Melissa and I don't need to race away. If you do, please feel free to. But here are our contact details and where to find Melissa, and where to follow us. And as we've said, please do subscribe to our newsletter so that we can send you information about those grant opportunities as they arise.
And then follow us on the socials, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram if you like. We do post occasionally about things that are opening up there, or celebrate success stories on our socials. But yeah, I'm more than happy to have a chat with anyone one-on-one, so feel free to send me an email, and if I can't answer your question, we've got a big team of people that know a lot about grants or have experience in other types of fundraising, so we're more than happy to help. So yeah, thank you so much everybody for sticking around. It's been really, really great to have you all here with us today. We appreciate the time, and again, just thank you so much for the work you've been doing with your school at the moment, for your students. We know it's been an incredibly tough time, but we're just in awe. Our teachers are our superheroes at the moment. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks everybody. Have a great night. Stay in touch.